So, I never thought I'd end up as a substitute teacher, especially not in this place. It all started after I lost my job, my marriage, pretty much everything. And the way I found this teaching gig, let's just say it wasn't normal. Last year, after the divorce, my ex's dad, who owned the company I worked for, cut me loose. I spent months drinking myself into oblivion. Every day was just trying not to exist. Then one day, my debit card got declined. Rock bottom. That's when I saw it on Craigslist. Substitute teacher. Gifted special education. I'm not a kid person, but I was desperate. The school looked like something out of the 1800s. Red brick, huge oaks, alumni who went on to be presidents and CEOs. Meanwhile, I showed up in my beat-up Camry. The receptionist didn't even ask questions, just led me down this long hallway to a massive steel door. She typed in a code, beep, 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 and the airlock opened. She stopped at the stairs. "This is as far as I go," she said. "We pay in cash, daily." That was enough for me. I went down. At the bottom, I found this round little door, almost like something from The Hobbit. Next to it, a piece of paper. Rules. When the children whisper, never turn your back. After nurse visits, don't make eye contact for 15 minutes. Don't help them afterward. Punish disobedience with the button. Don't touch your payment until the day is over. Creepy, right? But in the cubby below was an envelope. 7 crisp hundreds. The bell rang. The door cracked open. 27 second graders walked in. Quiet. Calm. Too calm. At first, everything seemed normal. Lesson plans, chalkboard, recess. But when they came back from outside, the whispering started. Soft at first, then louder, like a swarm of bees. I couldn't move, couldn't turn. Shadows started forming into children at the edge of my vision. Finally, I forced myself to face them. The second I did, the sound shattered, the lights returned, and the kids just sitting there like nothing happened. One raised his hand. The answer's 7. He was just answering a math problem on the board. Moments later, the bell rang. End of day. Hours had vanished. I bolted, grabbed the envelope, ran upstairs. The receptionist looked surprised. "You're alive," she said. "See you tomorrow?" And like an idiot, I said yes. As I walked outside, the sun felt warm, but the breeze through the trees sounded like whispering, and my blood ran cold. I needed a drink. So tell me, if you were me, would you go back for another day? Or would you run and never look back? My grandfather froze to death on our kitchen floor in the middle of summer, and I'm the only person who knows what really happened. My mom found him early on the morning of July 15th, stretched out between the refrigerator and the breakfast table like he'd been reaching for something, skin blue-white with ice crystals still clinging to his eyelashes, while the thermometer on the kitchen wall read 82 degrees. I'm Theo, 17, part-time sandwich artist at Subway, full-time disappointment to my parents' college fund expectations. A normal Midwestern kid who can drive in snow before he can parallel park, who plays JV basketball badly and rides his bike home past empty gas stations at night. Nothing about my life prepared me for finding Grandpa Isaac's body that morning, or for understanding what had happened. He'd lived with us 4 years since Grandma died. Steady, unremarkable. The guy who'd managed the local IGA for 20 years and remembered every customer's kids' names. And yet, there he was, ice cold in 80-degree weather. The coroner, Dr. Willits, spent 45 minutes examining the body, checking the thermostat, questioning Mom and Dad about medications, measuring the room temperature 3 times with different thermometers, frowning at readings that made no sense. Severe hypothermia, he said finally, signing papers with the kind of confidence that satisfies death certificates and insurance companies, but no one else. Dad asked the obvious. How does someone freeze to death when it's 80 degrees outside? Dr. Willits adjusted his glasses, talked about catastrophic regulatory failures, medication interactions, strokes affecting the hypothalamus. Mom mentioned the frost. He dismissed it as condensation from the air conditioning, even though ours had been off for 3 days. Half the town came to the funeral to honor the man who'd bagged their groceries and given their teenagers first jobs. None of them knew about the temperature of his skin or the thin layer of frost around his body. None of them saw what I saw when I came downstairs that morning. My grandfather's eyes wide open, mouth frozen mid-word, looking terrified. Strange things had started 2 months before. May 28th should mean thunderstorms and tornado watches, not finding patches of kitchen floors so cold they made my feet ache through socks. Cold spots appeared, then vanished, reappeared elsewhere. Dad blamed drafts, Mom blamed the AC. I pressed my palm to the frigid carpet and watched my breath fog in 70-degree air while frost formed where I exhaled. Then came the winter winds, smelling of snow, carrying whispers I could almost understand. Once I asked Grandpa if he smelled it. His hands trembled as he shut an album of old photos. "It's May, Theo," he said, but his voice cracked and he was wearing a sweater in the warm afternoon. The whispers drifted through rooms like invisible smoke, sometimes calling a name, sometimes murmuring like distant conversations. Grandpa heard them too. I'd find him at midnight whispering, "I know you're cold, I know," to an empty room. "You can hear them too, can't you?" he asked me once, eyes desperate. "Then you know she's coming." By June, the shivering started. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., teeth chattering, frost on my window while the thermometer read 75 degrees. Grandpa became paranoid, checking locks, staring at photographs of his working years at the IGA, lips moving in silent conversation. One night at 2 a.m., I found him barefoot in the kitchen, frost sparkling under the light. "She's coming," he whispered. "She's been walking through the snow for 27 years, and now she's almost here." On July 4th, just past midnight, the temperature in my room dropped 20 degrees in a heartbeat, and I saw her floating 3 feet above the hallway carpet, translucent like looking through ice. A woman in a winter coat with frozen strands of hair, snow clinging to her shoulders without melting. She drifted toward Grandpa's room, leaving a trail of frost on the walls. Her eyes were the color of winter sky, pale, empty, cold enough to freeze blood. She passed through his door without opening it, and for hours I listened to his one-sided conversation with someone who answered only with the sound of wind through bare trees. 2 days before he died, Grandpa told me the worst thing he'd ever done. He told me about Mary, the bookkeeping clerk at the IGA everyone called Mean Mary, and how she'd humiliated a mentally challenged maintenance kid named Tommy in front of the whole store. And then he told me about the blizzard of February 1998, about seeing Mary's Buick stuck in a snowbank, her arms waving for help, her face pressed to his truck window, and about how he thought of Tommy and put his truck in drive and left her there to die. They didn't find her body until March, a mile from her car, frozen in a drainage ditch with her arms wrapped around herself, still wearing that winter coat. "He killed her," Grandpa whispered. "She's been walking through that blizzard since then, and now she's found me." For the last 2 days of his life, he begged us to leave the AC off, wore sweaters in 90-degree heat, whispered to the empty air as frost formed around every surface around him. On July 14th, the house felt like a freezer to me, but normal to everyone else. At 2 a.m., I found him in the living room staring at the front door. "She's right there," he said, pointing to a shape only I could have see, frost forming on the wall in the silhouette of a woman. Her eyes are like looking into a January sky. We sat together until dawn, me holding his frail, cold hand while frost patterns spread across the room. That night, the whispers became words. Mary's voice, accusing, demanding. Grandpa responded steadily, accepting blame, apologizing, asking her to leave his family alone. By midnight, the house was a walk-in freezer, ice covering everything. Near 1 a.m., he turned to me with warmth and affection. "Go to bed, Theo. You can't help me. I'm ready." I went to bed knowing I'd never see him alive again. Mary had finally gotten her revenge, making sure Grandpa felt every moment of the cold that killed her. He died surrounded by family, but it wasn't mercy. It was just a different kind of cruelty. 3 weeks later, I sent my college applications exclusively to schools in Florida and Arizona. Some things are too cold to forget, and I never want to feel winter again. The frost disappeared from our house the day we buried Grandpa. But on colder nights, I still hear whispers in the wind, fainter now, more distant, like someone calling from very far away. I think Mary is walking again, looking for the next person who left someone to die in the cold.
We had been searching for 3 hours when Sean finally figured it out. I'm not sure if it was our hushed tone or our hesitation at the trail intersections we came across that gave it away. "Are we lost?" he asked. And I shuddered at his worried voice because this weekend was supposed to be a chance for me to bond with my younger brother. And he had started the hike so excited. But now we were deep in the woods, far beyond any phone signal, and my father and I had to admit the truth that was my fault. Dad crouched down to Sean's height, his voice calm but heavy. "Yes, I didn't want to get you worried because I've been to these woods before, and I thought I could find a way out, but I'm afraid your sister and I don't really know where we are." Sean's eyes widened, that innocence of still believing his dad could never fail and that his older sister, me, practically a second mother with our 10-year gap, wouldn't mess up this badly. I felt that image crumble right in front of me. "But it's okay, son," Dad continued. "We packed for an overnight trip, and if we can't find the main trails, I have another idea. We'll be home tomorrow just like we planned." Sean looked at me with worried eyes. "But what about the map?" My face drained of color. I, I, I stuttered in shame until Dad cut in. "Your sister seems to have lost our map." His stern glance pierced me. Then he softened his tone. "But it's okay. We'll figure this out as a family." I don't know how it happened. He had given me the map that morning at Rich Mountain Trail. Everything had gone smooth. First, the colorful fall trees, then the swimming hole where we picnicked and played in the water. Afterward, we dried off, started toward the Deep Woods campsite, sun hot on our backs, tents weighing heavy, but manageable. Then Dad led us off the main trail into narrower paths, rocks underfoot, barely a trail at all, until finally he admitted the woods seemed unfamiliar. We stopped in a clearing, Sean climbing a stump and pretending to be king of the forest, while I dug through my bag. My panicked breath, the map wasn't there. Dad and I tore through every bag, even Sean's. Gone. "When was the last time you saw it?" Dad asked. "At the swimming hole," I whispered. His look matched mine, concern. "Don't worry," he said. But 6 hours later, we were still circling through endless woods, second-guessing landmarks, chasing our tails. When Sean realized, I apologized to Dad, guilt suffocating me, and he only sighed. "It's all right. You didn't mean it." He explained his compass plan, heading northwest to backtrack, maybe find a peak, maybe find safety. We trudged another hour until dusk forced us to camp. 2 tents, a small fire, dinner under the swaying branches, Dad reassuring us again, "We'll be home tomorrow." Sean slept quickly, but I tossed and turned, haunted memories of stealing money for pills, flooding back. Dad's disappointed eyes burning me. I crept to the fire where Dad sat carving wood. "Can't sleep?" he whispered. I shook my head. "Don't be too hard on yourself. I'm proud of you," he said gently, then left me alone with the dying fire. That's when I saw the edge of a prescription box in his bag. Rehab had taught me to resist, but guilt clawed at me, so I reached in. "It's just allergy pills." I shoved them back, but my fingers brushed thick, folded paper. My heart dropped. It was the map. He had it all along. He'd let me drown in guilt, let Sean worry, pretended we were lost. Why? My head spun. Why was he tricking us? Was he leading us somewhere? Rage burned in me as I grabbed his compass and knife, planning to find the ranger station marked north. Quietly, I slipped into the night. The trail grew steep, branches clawing me, adrenaline pushing me past the ache in my legs.
At midnight, at the mountain peak, a shack loomed before me, rotting and silent. I knocked. No answer. Inside was darkness until my flashlight revealed a mirror. My reflection shook, eyes wide, hair a mess. Then behind me, in the glass, a shape swirled, a face forming, a mouth moaning. I stumbled, crashed through a weak floor into a crawl space. My phone light flickered over bones, human bones, piles, hundreds. And worse, flesh still clung to one body. It was my dad. His torso severed, decomposing. My dad was dead. Then who was in the tent with Sean? Footsteps creaked above me. Panic. I crawled through a gap and ran until morning light tinged the horizon. My lungs burned, my mind spiraled. Bones, the mirror, my father's corpse. The thing leading us wasn't him, it was something else, wearing him like a mask. I had to protect Sean. Back at camp, I slipped the map and compass into Dad's bag, killed the fire, slid into the tent. Sean still slept. I'm very relieved. I wiped sweat, pretended to have been asleep. My plan? Wake him, take him, escape. But footsteps came too soon. Dad's cheerful voice rang. Good morning, kids. Rise and shine. We need an early start. Sean stirred, unaware. Breakfast, packing, his hand on my back reassuring me. Don't beat yourself up. We'll figure this out. He was too kind, too sincere, almost convincing me it was all a dream. But as we climbed a steep hill, exhaustion tearing at me, we reached a summit and there it was, a building. Sean excited. Maybe someone's inside. Dad urged me. It looks like a ranger station. Come on. But below the cliff, I saw the cascade, the swimming hole, our car less than a mile away. He hadn't said a word. He had to know. My stomach dropped. This wasn't him. Do you have your knife? I asked, testing him. He faltered. I accused. It's in your bag with the map you said I lost. His eyes shifted. His tone turned sharp denial. My anger exploded. Look down there. You know it's the same. His glare turned cold. I shoved him, all my weight slamming into his back. He tumbled off the cliff. What if I was wrong? What if I just murdered my father? Sean's horrified eyes filled with tears. Sean, it's not what you look like, I begged. But then, from the shadow of the building, another figure appeared. It was me. She lunged for Sean, dragging him inside. I chased, dove at her, fought my own face, my own hands. She stabbed me, a cry of pain, blood flooding my stomach. Sean deserves better than you, she whispered coldly, knife slick with my blood. I grabbed a skull, smashed it into her face, but she recovered too fast, too strong. Sean froze at the doorway. She turned to him sweetly, pretending I was the monster, lying to him with my voice. Desperate, I confessed every horrible thing I'd done, stealing his money, failing him, being the worst sister, just so he'd know I wasn't trustworthy, just so he'd save himself. Break the mirror, I gasped. Sean lifted the skull, hurled it. Glass shattered, a shriek split the air, and she vanished. Gone. Silence. Sean knelt by me as I bled out, my vision dimming. I whispered instructions. Take the trail to the waterhole, follow it to the road, get help. He ran, my little brother running to survive, while I prayed the broken mirror had dragged the monster away forever.
Sometimes the road signs lie. A few weeks ago, my wife and I went on a road trip for a family reunion in El Paso, Texas. I am now sitting in the hospital waiting room, desperately wishing we hadn't. How much longer? Melanie asked, leaning her seat back and putting her hand into the small of her back in a feeble attempt to find a more comfortable position. Google says we've got a few more hours to go, I said, glancing quickly at my phone sitting in the cup holder, then putting my eyes back to the road. Do we need to stop again? Melanie shifted in her seat a bit, removed her hand from behind her, then sat it back up to its original vertical position. At 7 months pregnant, her options for comfort were quickly dwindling, and none of them involved the front seat of a car. No, let's just go. If we stop again, I'm not going to want to get back into the car. Signal lost. My phone's robotic female voice announced. God damn it. I sighed. The phone had been doing that for the past couple of hours at increasing intervals. There had apparently been an accident or something on the main highway, which would have backed us up by at least an hour, according to Google. In order to avoid that, we'd taken a detour that snaked around the accident through the desert on a 2-lane highway. That had been 3 hours ago, maybe more. It was hard to keep track of when it had happened because even before the phone had alerted us of the accident, the whole trip had been little more than a palette of browns and grays, broken up only by the regular bathroom break. As I saw it, the New Mexico desert was the skid mark on the underpants of America. And if I never had the pleasure of driving through it again, it would be too soon. The sun had set about an hour ago, not long before the signal started getting more spotty, and the highway hypnosis had really started to get to me. There was nothing but desert on either side of us, and even with the high beams on, the darkness covered us like a thick blanket. "Got any more Red Bull?" I asked. "If we're gonna go for a few more hours, I need some wings." Melanie reached into the back seat for a second, grunting with discomfort, then returned with a can of Red Bull. "Last one," she said. "This was sitting on the seat, so the sun warmed it up for you." "Great," I said, taking the can, cracking the seal, and swallowing 3 large gulps. "This will sit well with all the other junk I've been eating for the past 2 days." Without a baby on the way, Mel and I could have driven the stretch between Bozeman and El Paso in 2 days without a problem. But with her being as pregnant as she was, we had to carve out almost double the time, and she was still miserable. I let out a burp that tasted like all the atrocious snacks and truck stop food from that day mixed with the warm energy drink I was layering on top. Solemnly, I promised myself I would eat nothing but salad and water for the rest of my life. "Turn left here for the Church of Christ." "I thought the Church of Christ was back there," Mel said, reading the dilapidated sign as we passed it. "No, that was the Church of Jesus Christ," I said. "Big difference, apparently." All through the drive, we'd seen a wide variety of local churches, mostly generic, but after passing one called the Church of Liberty over a backdrop of a poorly drawn Confederate flag, we had turned it into a sort of game. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the hum of the engine and the intermittent signal lost notification from my phone. I had looked at the phone earlier when the signal was stronger and saw that we just needed to go to the end of this road, turn right, and we'd find ourselves getting back onto the freeway. That was until we saw a sign that said, "Freeway entrance left 1 mile." "I thought you said it was a right at the end of the road," Melanie said, sitting up and grabbing the phone. "That's what it said," I insisted. "I checked it last time we had service, like half an hour ago. We had about 60 or so miles to go, and then it was a right." "How sure are you?" she asked, putting the phone back into the cup holder. "'Cause your phone is still saying it has no service, so it's not going to be any help." "Pretty damn," I said. Just then we passed another sign. "Freeway entrance, left, 0.5 miles. "At least, I think so." "I think we should follow the signs," Mel said. "I don't want to get lost out here, and the phone hasn't had consistent service in a while. It could have reset and changed routes or something to have us avoid the highway. Remember last time?" I did remember last time. A Vegas trip that ended up being 4 hours longer than it should have been because my phone reset and had us taking frontage roads and city streets. It would have been longer had Mel not thought to check the route on her phone. I was sure that I had seen it was taking us back to the highway, and that the next turn was a right in about 30 minutes or so, given our current speed. But with the evidence to the contrary quickly approaching me in the darkness, illuminated by my headlights, I made the single most critical mistake that I would regret for the rest of my life. I followed the street sign and turned left. Mel leaned back in her seat, embarking again on her quest for a comfortable position, and I continued to stare at the lines in the road as we passed. Time begins to lose meaning when you've been on the road in the dark for as long as we were that night. It could have been hours that we spent speeding straight down the desert road, or it could have been days. With no focal point, it was really up to the clock alone to tell us how long we'd been there, and the clock on the dashboard had inexplicably reset at some point, something it did on occasion for most of the time I'd owned the car. My faith in the phone had begun to waver even further, as I was becoming sure even that clock was running slow somehow. We'd drove for 5 or 6 miles according to the odometer, and the clock would read only a minute or two had passed. I drained the last bit of Red Bull down my throat, again promising myself nothing but clean eating after this trip was over. Moments later, I felt a dull pressure in my bowels. The last drop of liquid must have been the last straw for my bladder. Mel slept quietly next to me, having finally crashed a while back, and I made the second decision I would come to regret. Although we hadn't seen another car for miles, I flipped my hazard lights on and pulled over to the side of the road. I turned off the car and stepped out and relieved myself, relishing one of the finer points of being a man and having the ability to take a leak in the middle of the road without much fanfare. Mel stirred then and asked if we were there yet. Not yet, just a bit further, had to take a leak. She rolled her eyes and closed them again. I turned the key to start the car back up and heard a sound that sunk my heart into my stomach. Click, 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 click. Oh, shit, I said under my breath. Please don't do this. I turned the key again and once more heard the series of clicks telling me that my car didn't have enough power to start. Fuck, I sighed, resting my head against the steering wheel in defeat. What's wrong? Mel asked, opening one eye. The battery's dead. What? There was a hint of panic in her voice and she sat back up, totally awake now. Yeah, it was running off of the alternator. The battery needs just enough power to start, then the car can run off of the power generated by the alternator. All we need is a jump, and we should be able to get the rest of the way, as long as we don't turn the car off. But who's gonna jump us? Mel asked. It's been a while, I admitted. Definitely not since we made that turn back there. Fuck, Mel spat. Fuck, fuck, fuck. Stay here, I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. Where are you going? She asked, the panic in her voice arising. Just up there, I said, pointing down the road. I think I see a sign maybe 100 yards out there. It might give us an idea of which direction we need to go, or if we need to just wait until the sun comes up. She nodded. I'll keep my flashlight on so you can see where I am. I'll just go there, then straight back. Unless I see a Denny's. Then you're on your own. She flipped me off. I kissed her cheek and stepped out into the night. The air was brisk, despite having been downright hot during the day. I shivered and hugged my arms around my torso. As I approached, I realized it wasn't the kind of sign I was hoping for. It was made of cracked wood that looked just a little better than the sign for the church we'd seen a while back. Painted in white letters, it read, Gomper's Farm, above a crudely drawn arrow pointing down a dirt path to the right. My gaze followed the arrow, and I thought I could see a light far off in the distance. A scream broke through the darkness that turned my blood to ice. "Mel?" I called, wheeling around and bolting back the way I came. "Melanie?" I could see the shape of the car in the distance, but it was too far away from my flashlight to do much good. I sprinted down the road, screaming my wife's name in a hot panic. "What? What?" Melanie called back, alarmed. I slowed when I heard her voice and held the light up again. She was standing on the passenger side of the car with the door open. "I thought I heard you screaming," I said through heaving breaths. She looked around, confused. "No? You didn't hear that?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, I don't think so. I was in the car until I heard you yelling, though." "I don't know," I said, shaking my head and spitting the bitter flavor of adrenaline into the dirt. "Maybe it was an animal or something," she suggested. "What did the sign say?" "There's a farmhouse or something about a mile down the road, I think. It's not exactly ideal, but if I jog it, I could make it in about 10 minutes or so." She mulled it over for a moment. Then I saw the resolve on her face, and I knew what was coming next. "I'm going with you, then." I didn't like it, but I could tell that arguing wasn't going to get me anywhere but the doghouse. And considering the scream I heard, I preferred having her close. "Fine," I agreed. "Grab your jacket, though. I'm gonna grab mine and a couple of water bottles from the back." A moment later, we were hiking down the road, our silhouettes illuminated intermittently by the orange hazard lights we'd elected to leave on. I doubted the battery would last if those lights were on too long. Mel had thought to leave a note on the windshield telling whomever found it that we'd gone to the farmhouse. Hopefully, they'd stick around long enough to help. There was a cool breeze that played with our hair as we walked. Not uncomfortable, but enough to make me zip my jacket up just a bit more. Mel held the only flashlight we had, and the beam bounced up and down in the darkness like a buoy. The car was barely visible when Mel shrieked so suddenly I nearly tripped on my own foot. "What? What?" I asked, suddenly panicked. "Look," she said, extending her finger past the head of the flashlight. "What?" "It's gone now. You didn't see it?" No, I was too busy asking myself why I'm hiking with a pregnant banshee. "There's something out there," she said, ignoring my jab. "Just past that rock. I saw a pair of golden eyes." "Probably a coyote," I said, starting to walk again. "They're cowards. If we keep walking and talking, nothing should bug us, especially if we stick to the road here." Mel nodded, then caught up to me. "How much longer do you think it'll be till we get to the farm?" "Don't know," I shrugged. 10 or 15 minutes, maybe? Just then, I saw the eyes she was talking about. Out in the distance, next to a large boulder on the side of the road, sat a pair of curious golden eyes. "Definitely a coyote," I said, pointing at it. "You can see its shape a bit. All fours, low to the ground. It looks like it might be a little bit bigger than the ones I've seen." We kept talking as we walked down the path, closer to the eyes, tired, and when they disappeared, I was a bit disappointed, but not surprised. Part of me wanted to see the coyote up close, but if we got close enough to see it, that probably meant we were close to a den. We talked about what we'd do when we finally got home and how soon we'd find ourselves laughing about the whole ordeal. The walk was long and difficult for Mel, but eventually we saw the farmhouse's silhouette against the horizon. It wasn't huge, but it looked livable, and more importantly, there was light. "Thank God," Mel muttered, squeezing my arm. "At least someone's awake." We quickened our pace, gravel crunching beneath our feet, until the dirt road opened up to the yard of the property. The house looked old, but cared for. Paint peeled in spots, but the porch light glowed warmly. A rocking chair creaked slightly in the breeze.
We climbed the steps and I knocked on the door. It was late, so I half expected no one to answer. But a few moments later, the door creaked open and an older man appeared. Tall, broad-shouldered, with thinning gray hair. "Well now," he said, "what brings y'all out here this late?" "Sorry to bother you," I said quickly. "Our car died out on the road. My wife's 7 months pregnant. We just need some help getting it jumped." The man's eyes softened. Then he nodded. "Name's Arthur. Y'all better come inside first. Roads aren't safe at night." From behind him, a woman's voice chimed. "Who is it?" "Travelers," Arthur called back. The woman appeared, petite, with sharp eyes, maybe a little younger than Arthur. "I'm Ruthie," she said, eyeing us up and down. "You poor things. Come inside." Mel glanced at me, then back at Ruthie, then stepped into the house. I followed. The interior was odd. Old wallpaper, mismatched furniture, the faint smell of dust and something herbal. But it was warm, and after hours on the cold road, that felt like heaven. Arthur shut the door firmly behind us, sliding the lock into place. Ruthie ushered Mel toward a couch, fussing over her like an anxious aunt. 7 months, my Lord. You shouldn't be out here walking. Sit. Arthur gestured at me. "You want some tea? Help take the chill off?" I hesitated, but Mel gave me a look, the kind that said, "Don't be rude." "Sure," I said. Arthur disappeared into the kitchen, and soon the faint whistle of a kettle filled the silence. Ruthie sat across from us, folding her hands in her lap, her eyes never leaving Mel. "Boy or girl?" she asked. "Boy," Mel said softly. Ruthie smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Strong name picked out yet?" "We've got a few," I said carefully. Just then, Arthur returned with 2 mugs of steaming tea. He handed one to me and one to Mel. "Drink up. Long road ahead." The tea smelled strong, earthy, not like the bagged stuff I was used to. I took a small sip, trying not to grimace. Mel lifted hers too, but didn't drink right away. Arthur sat heavily in his chair, staring at us with a strange smile. "Not many folk come down our road. Signs don't usually send 'em this way." Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. I forced a smile. "Yeah, weird detour. Phone kept losing signal." Arthur chuckled. "Phones don't work right out here. They get confused." Ruthie tilted her head. "Best to listen to the signs. That's what they're there for." The room felt smaller somehow, the air thicker. I set the mug down on the table, only half drunk. Mel shifted uncomfortably beside me, one hand on her belly. Arthur leaned forward. "So, your car. We'll take a look in the morning. Roads at night ain't safe." I frowned. "But it's just a battery. I can walk back with you." Ruthie cut me off sharply. "Mornin'." The finality in her voice silenced me. Arthur leaned back again, as if nothing had happened, sipping his tea slowly. We sat in uneasy quiet, the only sound the faint creak of the rocking chair outside. Mel whispered to me, almost too softly to hear, "I don't like this." I squeezed her hand under the blanket Ruthie had draped over her. "It's fine," I whispered back. "We'll be okay." Arthur's eyes lingered on me, like he'd heard every word. I took another gulp of tea, trying to get the mug down at least halfway, and agreed.